course, participate, please, by scanning that QR code and send us in your content. Also, give us a follow on Instagram, red_corner_blue corner, because football is completely evolved at this point. The offseason is soap opera. In a sense, the offseason is more exciting than some of the weaker weeks in the season.
I agree with that.
It is absolutely juicy. And let's kick it off here by heading to Columbus, to your alma mater, where it has really been quite the weekend for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Not only did they get a commitment from the top player in the portal in safety Caleb Downs, but they also nabbed highly touted recruit Julian Sayin away from Alabama. They've been active. That's now 6 transfers in total for the Ohio State Buckeyes, all with a 4-star ranking or better on 247 Sports. So let's just start with this question, because you can legitimately feel the momentum. It's like inertia being pushed right now for Columbus. And I want to ask you really what's behind this recent push, and really who's running the show? Like, is it Day, or do you think it's someone else?
I'll start with the second one first. I do believe that Ryan Day is running his program, but I think that there has been input from people outside of the program that wanted to see some changes. Now, go back to last year. Ryan Day intimated before the Georgia game that he would be giving up play calling duties in the offseason, elevated Brian Hartline to offensive coordinator, and probably realized at a point that Hartline, although he's a great recruiter, a good position coach,
wasn't ready.
Is not a guy who's ready to call plays. It is a skill. It's a little bit of an art and a science. And so he had to take play calling duties back. So I think this one was a long time coming, but you have to understand where Ohio State is as an institution. It is a program, a university, that was in transition. The president of the university was in transition. The athletic department, AD, in transition, right? And so as you start to look at a new athletic director, a new president of the university, it's probably where the board of trustees comes in, and they have to give some input where other voices would have been more prominent. And I think that they came down and said, listen, things have gone well, but they have not gone the way that we need them to go. Certainly not the way that we expect them to go. And along with that, I think we're going to have to change some things up. Ryan Day was a guy who reminded me a little bit of Dabo Swinney to a certain point. What I mean by that is really good coach, believes in high school development, portal, a little bit of an afterthought for the program. Hadn't really gone in acquiring some of the major talent that was out there. And I think people wanted to see that change, along with Ryan Day becoming more of a CEO of the program and not necessarily a guy who was calling plays on a game-to-game basis. And so this is where we get. Now, what is behind this? Michigan is behind this.
Yes.
100%.
Yep.
Losing to your rival 3 years in a row, things got to change, right? They probably looked at Michigan and what they did. Last year, Michigan had an NIL push to get guys to come back to the program. They wanted to keep some of their veteran senior leaders, guys who are impact players within that program. And they did so. And the NIL collective stepped up and allowed that to happen. Michigan last year brought in 9 transfers. A lot of guys who ended up playing, big impact guys. You had Josh Wallace, had a few guys on that offensive line, Ernest Hausman. Josiah Stewart, right? I mean, we're talking about guys who were playing some good ball. Ohio State says, well, maybe we can get some of those guys too.
Yeah.
And so I think part of this was the direction of the program needed some tweaking. And somebody told him that, said, listen, if you want to maintain a job here in Columbus and we think you're doing fine, but we need to step up, you got to change some things. And also, you better look at that portal, because there's some really good players out there that we haven't gotten in the last few years.
So it's funny because you said, okay, it's gone well in Columbus. Like, look, but for 99% of teams in college football, if you just took it in a bubble and looked at what Ohio State's done from a win-loss standpoint, from, a playoff berth standpoint, bowl game appearances, individual team awards, all the numbers, it's like, man, Ohio State has done well. Most teams would take it. But what's behind this push is the standard that, frankly, that's not what it's quite simple in Columbus. Good is not good enough. Like, excellence is the standard. All those numbers can look great, and you can make a college football playoff berth, and if that's good enough for the next guy, that's fine. But in Columbus, that's not good enough. You beat your rival or you don't. You beat your rival Michigan or you don't. That is how your season is judged, success or not. You are winning a national title, or at least getting to the game and competing for one, or not. Almost beating Georgia in the semifinals in a year where you lost to your rival Michigan. That season is a failure. Flat out, period. And it doesn't matter that 99% of teams would consider that season an absolute and utter success. So I think that standard is behind this push. And it hasn't just stopped there. It hasn't just been the transfer portal. Of course, they have a loaded quarterback room by now. And they went out and got their play caller in Bill O'Brien. Okay, so that's where I want to ask you this now, JP. Let's start with the OC and work our way down to the quarterback room. What does Bill O'Brien's addition mean for the Buckeyes?
Well, I know there were some people who felt like this wasn't necessarily a home run hire, and I can understand why. There were a lot of Alabama fans that felt a way about Bill O'Brien after his second season calling plays down there. I think Ryan Day needed a guy like Bill O'Brien on the staff. Number one, not just to call plays and help orchestrate the offense. It's a guy who is a head coach, not only in college, where he did very well at Penn State, considering all the things that they were up against, but in the NFL with the Texans, who have been perennially a bottom feeder, and they were a team that won 4 division titles under his tutelage.
Yeah.
Ryan Day needs that level of expertise. I think sometimes people forget that this is Ryan Day's first head coaching job, and I know he's been on the job for a while now, since 2019. There are still things that coaches learn every day. And when you're first time as a head coach, especially at a place like Ohio State, we've seen it a little bit, with Kirby Smart in his first few years at Georgia. We're seeing a little bit of that with Dan Lanning, who is 1-4 against his rivals, by the way. Everybody thinks he's doing a hell of a job. You need an experienced voice in the room, and that's what you get with Bill O'Brien.
Yeah. So Bill O'Brien, so you can judge, I think you can judge quarterbacks and head coaches off of championships, like if you want to talk about true excellence. And he's been with Bill Belichick for the Patriots, he's been with Saban in Alabama, and he hasn't won that championship. But the numbers still say this guy's a damn good football coach. I think you bring up a great point for Ryan Day in terms of his evolution. He's right there, but he's got to break through that next ceiling for everything we just talked about a couple minutes ago of beating your rival and winning a championship. The head coach experience is so critical for Ryan Day to feel very comfortable that he can be a head coach instead of having to worry about the play calling aspect. The last thing I think here is, and it's something that we've talked about for a while, it's time for people to be uncomfortable in Columbus. It's time for the players to be uncomfortable. It's time for the coaching staff to be uncomfortable. I don't think anyone should be sleeping great this offseason. The urgency to win in Columbus has to be as high as it's been maybe in this century, in this millennia, right? It simply has to be. And one thing I know about Bill O'Brien, no one starts off by saying, man, he's a player's coach and I love to play for him. I was super comfortable sitting. A lot of people say, you know what? He's an a-hole.
Yes.
You know what? He makes me uncomfortable.
Yep.
And maybe that's exactly what the Buckeyes need.
It's a great point that you bring up, because that is what people say. And they talk about the toughness and the straightforward approach. And that probably needs to happen there. Last thing I'll say on this before we get to our next topic here. There are no excuses in Columbus this year. And I think Ryan Day has put himself and his program in a hell of a spot to go out there and achieve everything that everybody in that program talks about. And as somebody who played for that program, and I know I'm a member of the media, I'm supposed to be impartial, I hope to hell that they do it. I hope they do it all. But there will be no excuse at the end of the year if they cannot get the job done, because the table's set. They've done a heck of a job recruiting. Ryan Day has retooled the staff. They have been close many times in the past, and this has to be the year that they can get over the hump and do what is expected in Columbus. Now, we'll take it from Columbus, where there was an influx of talent that we've seen, to Tuscaloosa, where we're seeing an exodus of extremely talented players, an unprecedented exodus, if you'd like to call it that. Since Nick Saban announced his retirement, 29 players have entered the portal with the intention of leaving Alabama. So Kalen DeBoer comes in, new guy. You and I both think that he's a phenomenal coach, but this is what he's up against. Some of the top players in the country leaving his program. Are we to expect a lull at Alabama under DeBoer?
Gosh, that's a lull. Again, it's a tough question to ask, because a lull for Alabama means nine win. A lull for Alabama means, especially at a 12-team playoff, a lull for Bama would mean not getting to that 12-team playoff. Which again, it speaks about the discrepancy in standards program to program in college football. Okay, so let's just talk about coaching transitions, and let's use our two alma maters, and let's talk about Tressel to Fickell, a lull, immediately to Urban Meyer, and it's back to championship standard, right? Okay, let's talk about Michigan, to go from Lloyd Carr to Rich Rodriguez to Brady Hoke to finally Jim Harbaugh. And then even for Jim Harbaugh, it's taken 5, 6, 7 years to get to this standard. The challenge for them now is to go repeat it. It is coaching transitions. It's an educated guess at best, right? You don't know what's going to happen. And especially in today's environment, where what we just saw is a rating of Alabama's roster.
Sure.
What's crazy to me is when you look at DeBoer's record, we talked about this on our show last week, he's a damn good coach.
He is.
He has a track record of winning. In my opinion, he has a track record of developing. Washington's going to put a bunch of dudes in the NFL in this draft. Guys that weren't exactly 4 or 5 stars coming out of high school. So in terms of a track record, I thought this was a slam dunk hire. But when you see guys leaving like that, JP, though it's still Alabama and though the roster's still littered with talent, you're losing big-time players on both sides of the football. I don't know what to expect from them this year. I certainly know they're worse off right now than they would have been had they kept those players.
I mean, you had All-American caliber players in there, right? Like Caden Proctor, I think many people believe that he would be a first-round pick by time he leaves college. I mean, he's a true freshman starting at left tackle, very good player. Caleb Downs, one of the guys that Ohio State got. He was phenomenal, not only as a player in that secondary at safety, but he was a guy who was returning punts and did a good job in that role. They are missing some impact players right now, and it does make a difference. And I do believe in Kalen DeBoer and his ability to coach and develop. I also would be foolish to say that they don't take a step back at least for a season or two.
Right.
When you look at programs traditionally, most of them do take a step back in coaching transitions. You mentioned our 2 programs. I would look at some of the national brands, and Texas, Notre Dame has had their down periods. You look at Miami, they have not returned back. USC has been through their ups and downs. I'm talking about some of the most prominent programs nationally that have taken a step back. So yes, is this maybe an 8 or 9 win season for Alabama? It could be. Do I expect that to become the new norm in Tuscaloosa? No, because Kalen DeBoer is a program builder and a guy who knows how to recruit and develop talent.
It is critically urgent for those reasons where you are, as a coach, are a salesman. You are selling to your current team, to your current staff, to the fan base, and to the future recruits, as well as the transfer portal, that you're the guy to win championships. The standard in Tuscaloosa is championships. Even if it's a 9-win or 8-win year, which would be frustrating for a lot of Alabama fans as we pivot to the message board, you have got to show that even if you struggle in terms of gross total wins, that you're the guy. You have to ignite fire and belief and vision to say you're the guy going forward.
I mean, hell, even Saban lost to a group of 5 in his first year, right? Like, I think these things are a little bit cyclical, but I think they can get there. Now, let's go to the message boards, as you mentioned, because, people are doing their little message board thing. Saban Country posted this demand from fan base saying, in part, you should be donating 10% pre-tax of your salary to Alabama. We are in a crisis. Should they be doing that?
Pre-tax. Hey, I mean, shoot, I don't know. If you want to win, right? Give to your church first. Give to your community first. There's plenty of money to go around down in Alabama, but it does speak to, when you look at that, it does speak to everything we just said. It's ironic to me, a little bit funny to me, maybe a little bit, joyous for me as a Northerner, a Columbus, a Big Ten guy, to see Alabama fans. Welcome to reality for the rest of everybody for this. It's the beginning of time. It's funny to me to read something like that, to say, crisis mode, this is the reality for everybody, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm there with you. These folks, many of them were not Alabama fans before Nick Saban came around. If you were someone who is our age, certainly that is the case there. And they are experiencing for the first time what college football can be like. And it is troubling, but certainly you'll make it through. And yes, your money is probably better served in the community rather than buying these young bloods out here, Mercedes-Benzes and whatnot. Now we got another fan, JJV0004, wants someone to notice, man, it's hard to watch the Exodus. Help.
It's more of what they say. These
help is on the way.
Okay, so JJV and our other guy from the previous message, they need to get in a little circle, maybe build a fire. Everyone, it sounds like everyone just needs to vent a little bit. Have you seen the Roll Tide Willie down there? We don't give a piss about nothing but the tide, right? They need a whole fan base to get together and just vent. I don't know that this year probably isn't going to be pretty. If you're expecting national championship, if you're expecting fireworks and confetti in year 1 of Kalen DeBoer, you might have to tamper your expectations a little bit. But I'm not ready to say it's a crisis yet either, JP. I'm not ready to say it's a crisis quite yet.
It feels a little bit like a crisis because they're going to have a really difficult time, fielding a team for spring ball if they have all those guys who have left, really implementing and developing a culture. But I still believe that Kalen DeBoer can get the job done. He's the right guy for it. Phenomenal coach. It's just going to take a little bit of time. But people are impatient these days. One thing that we've learned about the new age of college football, you better be good right now. We want to put the program in a microwave and see if we can't heat that thing up right now. But it doesn't always go that way, so patience.
Results.
Help is on the way. All right, we're going to take our first break over here on Red Corner, Blue Corner. Coming up, we've known that Kirk Ferentz isn't bringing Brian back next season, so we'll go inside the search to find his replacement. That is in just a few, but first, we get a look at Jim Harbaugh. Suitors have been lined up for months. What really makes sense at this part of the game? That and more when we return on Red Corner, Blue Corner. Right here on Red Corner, Blue Corner, and we got to talk a little bit about the Michigan Wolverines because one fan has a theory about all these interviews that Jim Harbaugh is taking. KJ Turn says Harbaugh wanted a vacation. By exploring his NFL options, he can travel and vacation for a few weeks and rest up. Jake Butt, what do you think about that?
First off, I don't know that Jim Harbaugh's a big-time vacation guy. I don't know that he's not. It doesn't take me as a guy that really has fun relaxing on the beach and soaking up the sun. He's a go, go, go. More is more, more is more. But what I do think here is the interesting piece, JP. He's weighing his options. I think Jim wants to be at Michigan. I think he would like to be back at Michigan. I do believe he wants to be at Michigan. And by going out to explore this, what he's communicating is there's some issues that need to be resolved back in Ann Arbor. Sure. And he's doing his due diligence by exploring options in case those issues don't get solved.
Yeah, I think that is the case as well. And one of the big issues is the roadblock in the relationship between him and athletic director Ward Manuel, and I think it's been well documented how Jim Harbaugh feels about him. And I think this puts Ward in a very tough spot moving forward, because if you can't lock up Jim Harbaugh, who wants to be at Michigan, doesn't feel like you have very much job security yourself. And so he's going to have to work through that. I think Michigan's going to have a very interesting conundrum when it comes to not only their head coach, but their athletic director as well. Now, to the vacationing point, I think we both knew a lot of guys in the NFL who used to threaten retiring during the offseason so they wouldn't have to go through OTAs and whatnot. And Jim Harbaugh might be doing a little bit
checkers, brother.
of the
Chestnut
same
checkers
thing here. All right, but we got Michigan coming off of its national championship season, but they've made very little noise since then. They still boast a top 20 incoming class, but when it comes to the portal, they're second to last in the Big Ten, 71st nationally, according to 24/7 Sports. So we got our swipe board going on over here, and let's size up some of the suitors for Jim Harbaugh. And we're going to start with the home team, the Michigan Wolverines. What do you think?
To me, it's this.
Okay.
To me, it's thumbs up to Michigan. And this is extremely complex, in my opinion. This is very complex. Jim played with Ward. When Ward was initially hired.
We forget about that, don't we?
We talked about how they had a good relationship, but we can look back. This is not, because in recent weeks, starting about the Big Ten championship, Ward has started to say the right things, and he's projected the right message.
But is he doing the right thing?
And is he doing the right thing? That's another thing. So saying, doing, those are all fair points. But if you just dropped in the past month, you'd say, man, Ward's got his back. But if you go back to 2020, you could say, hey, you asked Jim Harbaugh to take a pay cut. And Jim took a pay cut. That was a self-imposed suspension to start the year this year. The first 3 games, Michigan self-imposed Jim Harbaugh to be suspended. Later in the year, it was the Big Ten. But Jim Harbaugh has a saying. He says, Harbaughs don't forget.
Interesting.
He's not the type of guy to just say, forgive, forget, turn the page. He does remember these things. And to me, the biggest thing that needs to be figured out is, I don't know how this gets solved, but most like Jim Harbaugh and Ward Manuel are going to have to sit down together and figure out what is the path forward, because I do believe it's a thumbs up and Jim Harbaugh wants to be in Ann Arbor.
It's such an interesting thing, though, because I get why Jim Harbaugh would feel the way that he feels right now. I also think, as the athletic director, your job is to protect the university's athletic programs and the university in many ways. So can you guarantee a guy immunity from a situation that was going on under his watch? I don't know if that would be the most prudent thing to do as somebody whose best interest should be the university and not necessarily the coach. You could also make the argument that Jim Harbaugh is in the best interest of the university to remain the head coach of the Michigan program. This is where the conflict comes into play. I don't think we can fault Ward Manuel for asking Jim Harbaugh to take a pay cut, because he could have just fired him when he asked him to take the pay cut. But now you have to make good on that. So this is very deep and it is very complex. But I do agree with you. Hit that thumbs up. Michigan is a great spot for him. Okay, so now we've got the Atlanta Falcons sitting right here, and Jim Harbaugh had a second interview with them. I'll start off with this one. This is an intriguing spot for a guy like Jim Harbaugh, because he would have the ability to develop a young quarterback in Atlanta. They're probably going to be in the market for one. Does not seem like the quarterbacks on roster, including Desmond Ridder, who's a young guy, are the guy to be the quarterback of the future. Jim Harbaugh's reputation is known as a quarterback whisperer. Go back to what he did with Andrew Luck, what he did with Colin Kaepernick when he was with the Niners, and what he's done with J.J. McCarthy, who many people see as a first-round pick, although I do not agree with that evaluation. He's done a hell of a job with some of the quarterbacks that he's had the ability to work with. It is a team that has a lot of weapons. It has a lot of talent. What does Jim Harbaugh love to do? Run the damn football. Who do they have? Bijan Robinson. You say one of the best young running backs in the NFL. On its head, it feels like a place where Jim Harbaugh could have some success. I just don't know if this was the coveted spot that he was looking for.
Number one, above all else, is Jim Harbaugh prioritizes winning. He is not going to be a happy man if he's losing games. So I think the first question he has to ask is this a place I can win at? And is this a place I can win at? Meaning he will have the decisions as the head coach and the head man and the face of the organization to make those decisions. I do believe he'll be able to make those decisions in Atlanta. it's a weaker division than, say, the Chargers.
Agree.
So from those perspectives, you could say maybe. Again, to me, I'm with you. I don't. This doesn't feel right to me. I don't think Atlanta's ready to win at the level Jim Harbaugh wants to win right now.
I tend to agree with that as well. And now we get to the Los Angeles Chargers. Again, Jim Harbaugh has a second interview on the books for LA. This one is super intriguing. I agree with what you said about the division. As long as Patrick Mahomes is around, it's going to be a really tough one to win. But I do think that they could be a perennial playoff team. They paid Justin Herbert a ton of money. He is a good young quarterback. I still don't think that he has reached his ceiling as a player. This is an organization, though, that is in cap hell right now. They got a lot of guys on expensive-ass deals that they're going to have to figure out, and Jim Harbaugh is going to have to navigate them through that if he takes his job.
Yeah.
This is also a notoriously cheap organization. I played for them. When we were in San Diego, we didn't even have a damn cafeteria. We used to eat outside in a tent. I don't know how you can be a legit organization if you don't spend the money. If they were to hire a guy like Jim Harbaugh, that would be the indication to me that they're ready to go all in on winning, all in on spending what it takes. It's the most intriguing fit to me. I would say this is a thumbs up if they want him.
Hey, look, I'd eat in a tent if I was living in San Diego. It's always sunny out there. Now, okay, the Bengals are a notoriously cheap organization until they get Joe Burrow, until they figure out your quarterback and your coach.
No doubt.
Then all of a sudden you're ready to spend. I'm not going to fault an organization for being run like that. Hey, can you win now? Obviously, the AFC West is the winning in the Chargers externally is harder than winning for the Falcons.
No doubt.
And yet Jim Harbaugh, when he says winning, he's not worried about anyone else. Can he win with what he has? He believes he can coach the team. Got the quarterback figured out. I think he'd lean towards a veteran that's proven more than developing one in Atlanta.
Agreed.
And okay, 49ers, Pete Carroll and the Seahawks, the Legion of Boom.
Right.
That was a tough division back then to win in.
It was.
And he didn't run from it.
But all you got to do is get in the playoffs, though, right? And
all
I
you
think
got to do is get in the playoffs. And I'm with you. Roster to roster, cap aside, much better situation than Atlanta. To me, it's a thumbs up.
All right, hit that thumbs up for us.
Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Thumbs up.
All right. So there are selections there.
Sorry, Atlanta.
I know Michigan does feel like home for him. If he could stay there, I think everybody would feel like that's the right fit. Chargers super intriguing, though. So we'll see what happens coming up.
All right. Speaking of coming up, Jedd Fisch is looking for some new friends up in Seattle. Find out what bridges he burned leaving Arizona. That's on the other side of the break. Stick around. All right, welcome back. Last week, Washington officially introduced Jedd Fisch as their next head coach. He joins the Huskies after spending 3 seasons at Arizona, including a 10-win season last fall. But he may have burned bridges with the Wildcats. Arizona donor Humberto Lopez sent this message to Fitz. "You could have been a legend here at Arizona if you stayed. I went out of my way to make sure you didn't get our best players. I don't ever wish anyone bad luck, and you are the first one. You disappointed me. I thought we were friends." This is what you send to your
It sounds like
your
scorn
girl?
lovers.
Like, it sounds like a love story,
I'll
right?
say
Like, yeah,
it sounds like scorn lovers. Jedd Fisch
Right?
is the guy who, was courting a young lady who really held him down when he's down his luck, threw a couple dollars his way when he was ill, made him some soup, used to, rub him down after a long day at work. But Jedd Fisch always had his eye on another young lady, another woman that he really wanted to dedicate his time and his love to. And when the opportunity came, he said, "See ya, wouldn't want to be ya." And now you've got Mr. Lopez out here, somebody who donates a lot of money to Arizona, saying, "You thought you had me, but I got the last laugh because I turned all of your friends and family against you. You will have no success in this world, and I hope you feel that pain."
This is crazy to me. I mean, gosh, it's interesting to see the dynamic because the donors, the relationship between the donors who are putting up big cash want to have that control. And usually when you got that kind of money, you feel like you're in control of a lot of things. Money solves a lot of problems, but you're not in control of everything. And here's the funny thing about it is, you know what? Fisch and you, Humberto, you guys are probably friends. But don't get it twisted. There's levels to this, they say. You were friends right up until this point. I'm sorry, Arizona's not a final job. Even Fisch said himself at Washington, which is an upgrade program to program from Arizona. What did he say? He said, "Hey, Jedd, do you plan on being here forever?" Did you hear his answer to that question? He said, "Oh, well, that's a tough question. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I'll tell you what, I want to win here now, but I can't promise you I'll be here forever," effectively. That's the nature of college football. Humberto, no hard feelings, bro. Appreciate what you did for him at Arizona, but you can't fault him for leaving either.
Now, there's plenty of hard feelings, right? I think that is the thing here.
Plenty of hard feelings.
And it begs the question about the relationship between coaches and donors, especially now in this world. And I want to make this clear, too. I believe Arizona was a school that recently had some crazy financial issues as well.
Big time.
So I think it would have been difficult to retain any coach who you felt like was the next guy up, a guy who was a rising star, was going to be out of there because the money situation was a little bit finicky to begin with. But when you are a booster, I feel like the only scorned boosters out there are the ones that are at like the stepping stone jobs, because you talk to the Michigan boosters right now, they probably feel great about the work that they've done. Allegedly, the Ohio State boosters are all in on this program right now because you see the money that's being spent around Columbus. None of them feel scorned. Maybe if Ryan Day doesn't do a great job, they'll turn on him, but they'll love the next guy. That comes, no doubt. There's not a situation where they feel like somebody's running out the door and they gotta do what they can to make them feel the wrath. They always get the guy they want.
I guess you're right. I guess there probably is some hard feelings here for Humberto. I think when you go in here and you look at this, look, any head coach like Jedd Fisch, when you talk about a rising star, he's trying to win a national title. That's why he got into this business. Washington was just in the national championship game. I don't see a world anytime soon where Arizona's playing for a national title. Though I will say, Fisch brought them closer to that than they had been as far as I can remember, right? I mean, he inherited a program that was on a 12-game losing streak. They went 1-11, and then he left them on a 10-win season. You have to leave your programs better than you found them. That's exactly what Fisch did. And now the challenge for them is to go find the next rising star. But frankly, you have to know yourself. This comes up continually all the time. There's certain programs. Ohio State, that's the destination job. Michigan, that's the destination job. Alabama's the destination job. Even Washington is not the destination job.
I agree.
Kalen DeBoer can play for a national title and come close to winning it, and he's still moving on to Alabama. So Umberto, the next coach is going to be doing the same thing as well.
All right, so let's talk some more about boosters, talk a little bit more about money here, because The Athletic is reporting that the NCAA is investigating Florida's recruitment of Jaden Rashada in 2022. Now, if you remember, he was originally committed to Miami, who promised him like $10 million, but then signed with the Gator Collective on a deal promising over $13 million over a 4-year span, which landed him with Florida. And then, of course, none of this ever came to fruition because these people are all liars. He was over there playing for the Sun Devils. So what is your take on this situation, Jake?
Oh my gosh. First off, did you really, Jaden, I'm sorry, brother, did you really think you were getting 13 million?
There's a level of personal responsibility
Seriously?
in this equation, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Look, if I'm walking down the street, we went to Europe over the summer, and I'm walking down the street, and this guy is trying to sell me a Rolex for $100. Do I think I'm actually getting a Rolex? You know what I mean? I'm personally responsible to understanding the guy on the side of the street is giving me a fake Rolex. Now, but I also say, look, yes, you have personal responsibility, but this is also the issue with the current state of college football, where there's no oversight, there's no accountability. Promises can get made, promises may not always get delivered. 13 million is, I mean, Arch Manning isn't making 13 million, is he? Who's making 13 million?
I don't think anybody's
I don't know that anyone's
making
making 13 million. So, yeah, personal responsibility, man. It is just another example of why we need to move towards a more firm solution to protect the players and the people donating the money as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the idea being pitched around. I absolutely love it, and I said this before NIL was even a thing, but there should be a clearinghouse where you have to get all of your deals that run through there. They have to be approved by some sort of governing body. And oh, by the way, people can look into the financials of these deals, so we can prevent this type of nasty stuff from happening. I agree with you. There's a level of personal responsibility, and whoever his mentors and the adults that speak into his life are, kind of failed this young dude, because you let him think that somebody was going to pay him close to $14 million, and that is not something that I believe anybody is going to make in the NIL structure. No. At the same time, you raggedy people who thought you were going to take advantage of a young man by promising him something that you knew,
no doubt,
you had no intention of paying him. That's dirty business. It's nasty work. And I just don't think that you will be able to thrive and survive in a sport for a lot of people we feel is built on integrity and your word and what you can do to help uplift people. So it's foul, but young folks out here, don't be blinded by the numbers, don't be blinded by the light. Ultimately, bet on yourself, because that's where the real money's at.
The best thing I would say for Jaden is this is a really tough lesson. I can imagine the pit in your stomach when you think you're getting 13 million. I can imagine the conversation you have with your family thinking, our lives just changed. I don't know how much he's going to get. Obviously, it's not 13 million. Hopefully, it's still a good amount of money. But the pit in your stomach realizing, damn, we're not getting 13 million. Here would be my advice. Use that for good, bro. That can be the best thing to ever happen to you. Sometimes when these kind of things hit, get pissed off. Get pissed off. Prove that you're worth even more than 13 million. Go become the best football player you can be, and you can make $250 million. You might start chasing $500 million over your NFL career. It's a painful, painful lesson, but I've personally found sometimes those painful lessons could propel you to heights you wouldn't have got there otherwise.
They got to banish the people who lied to this kid, though.
Can we publicly get that? I'd love to get their names.
I would love to know this collective.
The school should be,
It is the nastiest thing you could do, is lie to a young person like that, but it's where we're at right now. Adults, we got to do better. All right, we're going to take a break over here on Red Corner, Blue Corner, but coming up, as I promised earlier, we are going to head to Iowa City, where they're still looking for their next offensive coordinator. Who's going to bring some juice to the Hawkeyes? We're going to break all of that down coming up. We're back on Red Corner, Blue Corner, having a fun show today. Tons to talk about in the offseason. That is Jake Butt. I am Joshua Perry, and you know that Iowa still has not replaced Brian Ferentz as their offensive coordinator?
Clock's ticking.
The clock's been ticking.
Ticking.
Yeah, I could see why it's been a tough deal there. But Hawkeyes thought they had their guy in former Wisconsin head coach Paul Chryst, but he declined the position. He was a guy that I was stumping for. I thought it was a match made in heaven, but
Had to be this one, right?
yeah, but we probably know how that conversation went.
Yeah.
It didn't necessarily go good. So Iowa's right back at square one in terms of their search. All right, so here's a difficult question for you. Who should they target now for this open OC job?
I start to, before I throw out names, I start to think about principles, and I think we can use the Paul Chryst situation to understand the state of this job search, right? Because we both agreed that was a match made in heaven. At least similar philosophies. Wisconsin at their best was more aggressive and more in line with what Iowa would like to be in a perfect world. But it seems here that you have to, when you ask yourself the question why this didn't work, I think you start to unlock some of the principles where it's like, I'd imagine Kirk still wants to have heavy influence over the offense. And if you're Paul Chryst going from a head coach now to a play caller, you want to have your stamp on that offense and say it's mine. Understanding, I'd imagine Paul Chryst wants to be a head coach again one day. So I think right now, when you think of that principle and you say that Kirk still wants to have his hands in this, you're not going to get a big name like a Paul Chryst in this scenario. You're going to have to catch a guy riding up like this that can put his trust into Kirk and say, I'm willing to give up some of my autonomy for you to still have influence over the offense.
Yeah, I feel like the strange thing about this is it always felt like it was going to have to be a more veteran coach, because I don't think that there are a lot of like young and up and coming pro style guys. Like Sharon Moore is a rare breed in terms of being a younger dude who is into pro style concepts in terms of offensive football. But he's also a guy who played along the offensive line when he was in college. Like, his DNA is to smash people and to run the football and to get big. And I just don't know how many offensive minds that are young and hungry are that guy. So the name that has been popping up is Joe Philbin. Joe Philbin was once an NFL head coach. He had been a coordinator in the NFL. He was an analyst for Ryan Day at Ohio State, making $275,000 a year when he was with the Colts right there. You see it up on his resume. I was in Indianapolis at the same time. I don't think he's a very good ball coach, but he continues to get jobs. Is what we see right now. What do you think about this?
No, I want to go back to you, because when we were talking about this, you know him on a much more personal level than I do.
Yeah.
So can you lay it out? Why don't you lay it out a little bit about what your opinion and your understanding?
I don't think he was worth a damn as a coach.
Why?
He wasn't. He didn't have that elite level organization to me, just in terms of what the concepts were. And I don't think he communicated extremely well with players. A lot of the time that I was in Indianapolis, I was on the scout team, so I was working directly with starting offense, and he'd be up there with the offensive line. And of course, they'd have the cards that you would read off, and you'd run the whatever the schemes were for the opposing team for that week. And I'm looking at this dude, and the way that he's telling us to do things, I'm like, there is not a defensive coach that would coach their defensive line to execute this way. This is not helping to prepare us to play against the other team. In meetings from guys who I knew that were on the offensive line, he was not dynamic. He was not a great communicator, and we didn't have very good offense. Part of that was because Andrew Luck was on the shelf and he was hurt, but I think the other part of that largely reflected upon the way that certain guys were coached. So as I'm looking at this, he would not be the first, the second, the third, the fourth, fifth, 20th guy on my list to take over as an offensive coordinator in a collegiate role. And one of the bigger reasons is, in college, you have to be a great communicator and a great teacher. And I don't think he's that.
Everything you just said would concern me, but at the same point, you know, what I said a few minutes ago, talking about the principles, what choice does Iowa really have at this point, right? And seriously, when you look at it, you know, maybe Joe needs this. And maybe Kirk says that this is what they're looking across from each other like maybe this is what has to be done. You're exactly right. To be a good communicator is extremely important because of the limitations you have per NCAA rules. So when you say Joe is not going to cut it as a communicator, that is slightly concerning. But you bring up a point about a young up-and-coming guy. No young coaches are saying, I want to be pro style.
Yeah.
Sharon Moore, maybe. But I can even say Sharon Moore has evolved as a coach because really it's pro style, but it's modern.
It's
still
very modern.
It's a modernized pro style.
It is, 100%.
So I think that should be a benchmark. Like Iowa should aim to get to that level a little bit of modernizing their pro style. I don't know.
That's why I felt like Paul Chryst was a guy. Like we had talked about this. I felt like they ran out of spread formations more than Iowa ever wanted to. And there's a team that was a pro style emphasis. To see how much their quarterbacks were in the gun, it was like makes sense. Run schemes change a little bit. Neither here nor there.
What really makes this whole equation extremely hard, and it's starting to ping pong back and influence itself, is the roster and the talent is not great. But the longer you wait to get a name in there to be your your offensive play caller, the harder it is to sell to talent to come into town.
Yeah.
So this is a circular thing that's. The one thing I know is Phil Parker's going to have a phenomenal defense next year. So Iowa fans, you do have that to come back. All right, let's head over to the message boards to look at a theory from Vegas Hockey, from Hawkeye Nation. He said, we think Kirk is coming out to announce a new OC, but then he pulls a Saban. Beth comes on and takes the mic and announces Urban Meyer as the new head coach. JP, you also know Urban really well. What do you think?
Well, first off, I thought this was a legitimate possibility for Kirk Ferentz. I thought he would be scorned to the point where he would say, you know what, I'm going to coach out this bowl game. I'm going to wait until the offseason after all the dust has settled, and then I'm going to retire and really put Iowa in a bad spot. But you know what? Kirk is a lot more mature than that. He is a guy that I don't believe would actually do that. It was just fun to think about. Urban Meyer to Iowa. If Urban Meyer got hired by the Iowa Hawkeyes, I am putting up my microphone, I am taking off my IFB, and I am going to Iowa City to coach. That is what I think about that.
What are you going to do? Are you going to coach? Will you coach offense? Can you be the one to save the day?
You know what? This is a good discussion. We should talk about coaching ladders at some point because I do think that there are issues with coaching ladders and pipelines. If I were to coach, I would coach on the offensive side of the ball. I think a lot of the ladders in terms of elevating are dead on defense.
Okay.
But on offense, wide receiver coach, offensive line coach, quarterback coach, coordinator right away, and those are the guys who become head coaches.
What position would you want to coach? Just out of my curiosity. Now you've really piqued my curiosity a bit.
I'm coaching the offensive line. I'm getting down there with the big uglies.
I'm gonna have you teach me some O-line, offset at some point in time. I'm really interested. I think you'd do a phenomenal job at it. I think you'd be a great coach. And speaking of that, college football is a young man's game. Did you know that, JP?
There I am.
That's been the name of the game. And we will talk about that on the other side. Find out what ties it still has, it being college football, to the late 1900s. That's next here on Red Corner, Blue Corner.
All right, welcome back to Red Corner, Blue Corner. We're going to take it down south, get a little detour here because Miami tight end Cam McCormick will be back on the sidelines this fall after the NCAA granted him a 9th year of eligibility. Now, he dealt with injuries, I believe, in 4 of his seasons, and of course, he had the COVID year in there, probably took a red shirt as well. He was believed to be the first student athlete to get a 9th year on the field. It's wild. It's one of the craziest things that we've ever heard, but it sparked a little game in our mind here. So, Cam McCormick was born in 1998. You were born in 95.
Yes.
I was born in 94. So this dude is old. We have some events, and we have to guess whether or not they happened in 1998.
Okay.
You ready?
All right, let's do it.
All right. Superstar Jack Harlow, born in 1998.
It's close. It's close. Ooh, I want it.
I'm gonna say he was born after 98.
You say, okay. After meaning 97, 96? Yeah.
No.
Or closer to us.
No.
Oh, he's younger.
Yeah.
90. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say he was born in 98. I'm going to say he was born in 98 on the dot.
What we got? March of 98. Look at you.
Hey. Okay. I'm making up for the rock fight earlier in the show.
Here's another one. Google was founded in 1998.
Google is older than 1998.
That's what I'm thinking too.
Google is older than 98.
What do we have on that one? 1998. All right.
Okay, 98 is a good year so far.
Did Sony release the PlayStation 2 in 1998? I'm going to say no. We've had too many 98s already.
Right. It's got to be younger. Closer to 2000, I want to say.
What do we have?
PlayStation 2.
2000, yeah. Look at you. All right.
I'm smoking hot.
American Airlines become the first to offer e-ticketing?
So I heard a story. Mark Cuban bought the lifetime supply of first-class flights with American Airlines, and it was later than that. So this is going to be closer to 2000 as well, in my opinion.
I'm going to go with Jake.
Okay.
1998. This is crazy.
Right. Now you got to help me out.
All right, now South Park. Did it premiere in 1998?
What do you think?
It feels like it's older. It feels like it's been on forever.
Yeah. So that would put it in, what were we years? So 20, so almost 30 years right now. So that would be 26, yeah.
I'm going to say it was not 98.
99.
What do we have? 97. There we go. All right. That's what I was feeling.
Okay. Man, they've been at it for a while then, huh?
Yeah.
Because 98 to 2008 to 2018, so that'd be 20. So they've been at it for about 26 years.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Jeez. All right. Well, let's finish up here with the poll that we had for today. How many wins will Ohio State have next season?
11 plus.
Anybody saying 6 or less? I feel
Who
like
are you guys?
That's just hate.
Corrupt.
Y'all are just straight hating. Interestingly enough, too, Ohio State has won at least 10, 11 regular season games. I'm going to say 11 regular season games since I got there in 2012. That was coming off of the 6 and 7 season.
Yeah.
We went 12-0 regular seasons back to back. We went 14-1 championship year. We went 12-1 the year after that.
Yeah.
They were back in the playoffs a year after I left, and so on and so forth. They haven't even had a 10-win season, regular season.
Will a team play 16 games next year with the expanded playoff? You can go 16 games next year. Is that correct? That's an NFL schedule.
Not for me.
Take care of your bodies, fellas.
For Jake Butt, I'm Joshua Perry. We'll see you Thursday.